One of the most aggravating problems you can have with a bike is if the gears don't change properly. So in this video, we're going to show you how to remove, replace and adjust a Shimano rear mech. For the job, you're going to need a set of Allen keys, a Phillips screwdriver, some pliers, a chain tool and possibly some cable cutters. You'll first need to remove your chain. If you haven't already done this, you can find out exactly how to do it with our video here. To remove a Shimano rear mech, you'll need to detach the cable. Put the mech to the smallest sprocket using your STIs, pull the cable crimp off the end of the inner cable using some pliers, then undo the cable crimper bolt by unscrewing it anti-clockwise. On our Dura Ace model, this requires a 4mm Allen key, but for some old models you may require a 5mm. Once you've done this, you'll be able to pull the cable free from the mech. Finally, simply unscrew the main 5mm rear mech bolt and the derailleur will come free from the hanger. To attach the rear mech back to the frame, place the main bolt against the rear mech hanger and use your 5mm Allen key to turn it clockwise until it bites. Once started, it should be easy to tighten. If it isn't, it might be cross-threaded, so remove it and start again. Before you tighten it too much, make sure that the B-tension screw on the rear mech is behind the stop on the hanger. This is what keeps the rear mech spring-loaded. This B-tension screw is used to space the top jockey wheel away from the largest sprocket. If the jockey wheel is too close, then the chain won't shift into the top sprocket because they'll be overlapping. Unscrew it anti-clockwise until there's about a 1cm gap between the top jockey wheel and the largest sprocket. Rusty, frayed or old dirty cables will prevent accurate shifting, so if you're in any doubt, it might be a good idea to replace them at this point. To take the inner cable out, firstly make sure that the STI has been clicked right the way down to the lowest gear, then roll the rubber part of your STI lever back to expose the end of the cable. Then find an area where the inner cable is exposed and push it through using your hands. The end of the cable will start protruding out of the STI lever and you'll simply be able to pull it from there. To thread a new cable in, push the end through the hole on the outer side of the STI lever until it appears on the inner side, then just pull it through until the cable end locks into the lever. Thread the cable through the first part of the outer cable near the bars, then through the cable guide located underneath the bottom bracket, and finally through the last piece of outer cable and through the barrel adjuster of the mech. Place the ends of the outer cable into the cable stop in the frame and the barrel adjuster. The barrel adjuster should be screwed almost right the way in. We tend to screw it right the way in and then unscrew it one turn just to allow for some adjustment either way. Pull the cable through the crimp bolt on the mech. Which side you put it on depends on the model, but you'll be able to see a groove where the cable should sit. Pull it as tight as you can by hand and then tighten the bolt clockwise. Next, you'll need to reattach the chain. You'll then need to adjust the high and low stop screws. These are not for indexing your gears, but simply limit the maximum travel in either direction of the mech. Make sure the STI lever is still in the lowest position for the small cog on the cassette and that the chain is on the big ring at the front. Then adjust the high screw marked with an H. Screwing it clockwise will move the mech towards the bigger cogs, whilst unscrewing it will move the mech in the other direction. You want to adjust this screw so that looking from the rear of the bike, the top jockey wheel is directly below the smallest cog on the cassette. If the mech is not low enough, the chain won't shift onto the smallest cog, and if it's too low, the chain might jump off the cassette and get jammed against the frame, potentially causing a lot of damage. Once you've done this, put the front mech down to the small ring and move the rear mech up to the biggest cog using the STI levers. If the chain won't go all the way up to the biggest sprocket, it means that there is either not enough tension on the cable or the L screw is too far in. To check if it's the cable tension, push the mech upwards using your finger and thumb whilst turning the pedals. If it then goes into the big sprocket, then it's the cable tension that is the problem. However, if it still won't go into the big cog when you push the mech, then you need to loosen the L screw. Turn the pedals at the same time as loosening it. At a point, the chain should jump up onto the biggest sprocket. Have a quick check from behind to make sure that the upper jockey wheel is in line with the biggest sprocket. At the other extreme, if the L screw isn't far enough in, the chain can jump over the biggest sprocket and get jammed between the cassette and spokes. If, however, you can push the mech by hand onto the top sprocket, then you need to increase the cable tension. To do this, unscrew the barrel adjuster on the rear mech anti-clockwise, like this, until it jumps onto the biggest sprocket. Now let's go through the fine adjustment or indexing of the gears. Start in the smallest sprocket and then using the STI shifter, click up one gear. If it doesn't go onto the next sprocket up, increase the cable tension by unscrewing the barrel adjuster anti-clockwise until it does jump up. Put it back to the smallest cog and try it again to make sure it works. Click up each of the sprockets one at a time until you're satisfied that the chain moves up the cassette correctly. Repeat these steps starting on the big sprocket and going back down the cassette. Make sure that it also works when you're on the biggest and smallest chainrings on the front. If the chain movements between cogs are inconsistent, i.e. it works on one part of the cassette but not all of it, then you may well have a bent rear mech hanger, bent derailleur cage, or some friction in your cables. Last but not least, if you have replaced the inner cable, you'll now need to cut the end off it using some cable cutters, leaving around 1 inch or 3 centimeters of cable protruding through the end. Then put a cable end cap on and crimp it into place lightly using some pliers. What mechanical issues have you got? Let us know down below and we'll try and produce a video to help you out. For more videos like this, go to www.youtube.com/GCN.